and one of them gives her a piece of carrot. And this sloth has this look on her face like she's the most excited animal on the face of the earth to ever get a piece of carrot. And she's so excited. She grabs it and she starts pulling it towards her. And she does the slothest thing possible. She fell asleep before she got up. And I just thought that was amazing.
All right, welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today, I'm excited to be interviewing Richard Glover, who's the CEO of Central Florida Zoo. Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, when I started my search for CEOs to interview for this series around Central Florida, I thought, what's a business that everyone knows, but most people don't really know much about? And of course, Central Florida Zoo.
Yeah, that is definitely true. There is a lot of assumptions made about an organization like a zoo, and what actually happens at a zoo is very different than what a lot of people think.
That is why I have you here, and I'm so excited to learn a little bit of behind the scenes. What goes on at the zoo. I mean, I can imagine dealing with animals is adds a layer of complexity that is well beyond just dealing with employees.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, definitely that does, both the dealing with them and the expenses related to them. I mean, it is
Yes.
a challenge people don't realize. We don't just have to feed them. We have aging animals that need
Yeah.
pet care and special, very expensive, hard to find medications. And there's just a lot of things to having live animals that you wouldn't think about.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, I want to get into all that. Let's start at the beginning. How did you become CEO of the Central Florida Zoo, and how did you come into that role?
Sure. I'll try to make it as brief as I can.
Sure.
But my journey, I spent about 20 years in the horse racing industry.
Okay.
And in the early 2000s, I started seeing information about the species that were disappearing across the world. And the more I read about it, the more I thought, I want to get involved in this and try to help save some of these species. Mm-hmm. So I made a career change, and I moved to zoos and aquariums. It was around 2012-ish that I got my chance to do that. I was hired to do marketing communications at the Texas State Aquarium in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was there for about 5 years, and my last year there, I participated in a program. There's a body that accredits the best zoos and aquariums across the country called the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA.
Okay.
Out of about 3,000 places that hold animals in the country, there's only 248 that are accredited by AZA.
Okay.
So through that body, they had a program that was to accelerate leadership opportunities for people in the industry. I went through that program. They picked 10 people each year.
Yeah.
It's a year-long program. And then, I knew what I wanted to do was eventually lead one of these organizations. There were a lot of people that were leading that were getting older and starting to retire. And there was clearly going to be a need for some younger people to start moving into these roles. And
Right.
I felt like that I could have a bigger impact if I was in that leadership role.
So how did you know? I mean, you say you knew. What was it about that drew you to that?
The leadership role?
Yes.
I was in marketing communications, as I said, and ended up doing a lot of things also in development, other departments. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I was carrying out my leaders' wishes on some things that I knew weren't going to work or weren't going to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that, with the knowledge I've gained, with the abilities I have to lead people and get people excited about things. When I'm passionate about something, it's very clear, mm-hmm. and other people tend to want to follow that. And
that's right.
I'm not the greatest speaker in the world. I'm not the most exciting person in the room. But if I give you a tour of the zoo, you're going to see and feel the passion, and you're going to get excited.
Yeah.
So I knew that those kind of things could help me be an effective leader. And what I want to do is be able to have an institution make the most impact on animal conservation, on sustainability, on the local mm-hmm. community we can have. And I knew that, wherever I was, the higher I am, the more I affect that impact.
Gotcha.
So I was looking for an opportunity to do that. And so, I worked a few other places, including the Florida Aquarium in Tampa in my journey. This opportunity came up 2 years ago at the Central Florida Zoo and Botanical Gardens. They did a nationwide search, and I was fortunate enough to be the one chosen. And, I was interested in this zoo in particular because it's been around for 100 years. It's part of this community. Mm-hmm. But it also has been, it struggled for most of that 100 years. Mm-hmm. And so it has so much potential. And I just saw so much potential in it and its ability to do more and have a greater impact. And so I wanted to come and be part of that.
Gotcha. So when you talk about impact, what is that? You know, when you were looking at this zoo, what impact did you see that it could make that it wasn't making?
Well, I think a lot of it was in its communications. Everything was very
Okay.
transactional. It was
Yeah.
very much focused on let's sell the next event that'll sell the next ticket.
Yeah.
And it was a change of mindset the zoo needed of let's storytell. Let's talk about the conservation work we're doing. Let's
Yes.
talk about the reason why these animals are important and they need to survive, how their survival affects us as humans.
Yes.
Let's really talk about the things people care about. Let's look at the education impact we're having. We're the only large cultural attraction in Seminole County. We serve over 54,000 people a year through our informal education programs. There's nowhere else in this county anywhere close to that. And we serve all the counties around us because a lot of them, Volusia County, Lake County, don't
Hmm.
have a lot of things like this. So we serve a purpose in this community that's really important, and being able to let people know that.
Hmm.
We've done a really bad job over a lot of years of doing incredibly important work and not telling anyone
Yeah.
what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I came in and really with the belief of, look, guys, we can still do all the same things,
Hmm.
but we'll be able to do more of them if we're making more money and more people are coming and more people see. Let's start telling the story. And honestly, in today's world, that's what people want anyway. They want storytelling.
You're speaking my language. I mean, as someone who helps clients create content, it's all about the story. You know, as much story as you can tell. Sometimes it's got to be a little bit more transactional, depending on what it is you're selling
Right.
or marketing. But the more you can make it human and connect emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and connect to people's hearts of what they actually care about. You know, I mean, everyone around the area cares about some aspect of what you're doing, but if they don't know that it's happening, then you guys suffer, and then they sort of suffer too because they weren't connected to it. So, yeah, I love that that approach. I mean, I think storytelling is something that the B2B world needs more of, and the B2C world is trying to do better, right? You know, you see a lot of selling still in marketing messages when marketing is not selling. It should be marketing. It should be really more geared towards communicating something that's compelling versus making it always about the transaction. So I love that. That's what you saw that, and how, when you came into the role, then with that perspective, what are some of the things that you did to change that direction?
Well, I think a lot of it was, we have e-newsletters, we have lots of subscribers, and all we were doing was thing after thing of here's this program you can come to, here's this
Yeah.
ticket you can buy. And I was like, guys, start talking about conservation stories. Start talking about us breeding endangered animals
Yes.
and having success with that, and what happens with those animals once they get older and we move them to other places, so we can keep that population genetically diverse. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many stories like that, or just the care of the animals. People have no
Yeah.
idea what level. A lot of people think and a lot of people assume that we go buy animals and we put them in the zoo for people to look at so we can make a bunch of money,
Yeah.
when in fact we view ourselves as a conservation organization. We're
Mhm.
lucky enough to get to steward the lives of these animals,
Right.
many of which have come to us because they were orphaned in the wild, or they
Hmm.
were being sold in the pet trade and they were confiscated, or they were somebody's pet and they should have never been somebody's pet and they couldn't take care of them. So a lot of the animals we have are like that, and then a lot of the animals we have are part of endangered or vulnerable species, and we're working with other AZA institutions to keep a population that's genetically diverse viable. One example, we've got a pair of amber leopards. There's 200 of them left in the world. We
Oh
have a
wow.
breeding pair. We're trying to get them to convince themselves they want to breed, so they can have cubs. But there's only 70 of those 200 that are still in the wild, and they're all at the China-Russia border. One disease outbreak, and
Yeah.
that species could be gone.
Oh
So the
wow.
population we have in zoos and aquariums is the insurance policy to keep that species alive and to be
Yeah.
able to propagate them back into the wild if that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, that's how we view ourselves. And those are the kinds of stories we need to tell for people to understand we're about the care of these animals. I mean, every day, every one of our animals gets some kind of enrichment to make their lives more like it would be
Hmm.
out in the wild. Sometimes it's taking straw from one exhibit to another animal, so they just smell another animal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's spraying perfume to have a different scent. It's rubbing meat different places, so they run around looking for it.
Yeah.
There's every day there's things like that. So people's assumptions of what zoos are and what they actually are now, especially AZA accredited zoos, is very different.
So when you arrived and you noticed that there was not a lot of the communication was lacking there, sort of externally to guests, that haven't been there or have been there. Did you find though that the story was being told when people arrived? So if people got there and they were going around the zoo and looking at the different exhibits, was the story being told at that point, but it just wasn't being told externally?
Sometimes.
Okay.
If they were coming for specific programs, then it was. If they were just coming to visit the zoo, there's signage all around the zoo. People don't read signage anymore.
Right.
Very few. The percentage and how many. I mean, typically, they'll spend 4 seconds on a sign.
Yeah.
That's kind of the average, and that means they're not reading hardly anything. So if you don't have humans actually communicating with them while they're here,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a lot of volunteers, and really the best advocates we have for the zoo and the best people to talk about what's going on here are those volunteers. So when we have a busy day and we have a lot of volunteers here, a lot of those guests hear more of those stories and get more of that.
Yeah.
But it's not as consistent as we'd like it to be because we just don't have the ability to staff to the
Sure.
level we'd have to guarantee everyone had that.
Sure. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm zoom out a little bit, I'm seeing that you have so many different parties, factors that is very complex. So you have volunteers, which I didn't think about because it's
Yep.
a nonprofit. You have employees,
Yes.
you have animals,
Hmm.
and then you have the guests, and then you have donors.
Yes.
Is
And a
there?
volunteer
Am I
board of
missing something?
directors. Yes. And then you have the added part of all of the local jurisdictions that have to do with us. Like we
Right.
are not technically in city of Sanford, but we are considered Sanford. We are Seminole County, so we have relationships with all of those elected officials, and they have a say sometimes in some things we
Yes.
do or can't do. So it's not even just the internal stakeholders and the guests, but there's so many beyond that. It is
Right.
it's a lot, and we have to message differently to a lot of different audiences, which
Hmm.
is a challenge sometimes. But honestly, part of what I wanted to do when I got here is let's get everyone rowing in the same direction and
Right.
talking the same way about the same things.
Yeah.
Once you start doing that, the different audiences become much easier.
Yeah. So I always like to ask if you have a target audience that you have in mind to bring in, because as you probably know, when you're trying to market something and you're trying to have some clear, compelling messaging, you have to speak to a specific niche of people. Who is your target audience?
That's a complicated question. I
I
can tell
bet.
you traditionally for zoos, aquariums, and for most kinds of museums, if you're talking on an advertising level, your target is going to be mothers 25 to 54. That's
Okay.
going to be the major target you'll do. That they are the decision makers that make a lot of those families
Hmm.
decisions about where they're going to go, what they're going to do.
Hmm.
And so they're probably the primary target. But for us, we're trying to expand well beyond that because honestly, a couple of things. We are the only larger cultural attraction in Seminole County. It's really important to my staff and to me that everyone feels safe and welcome here.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of different groups around this country right now that don't feel safe and don't feel welcome a lot of places.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we're making efforts to try to make sure that a lot of different communities feel invited.
Right.
Um, Beyond that, we also have the potential as both a zoo and botanical gardens. There are a lot of people that are interested in plants and botanical
Hmm.
gardens and flowers that might not necessarily be interested in animals, and those tend to skew older than our typical demographic a lot of
Right.
times.
Right.
So, we're trying to, in bits and pieces, address those different audiences, but it is a real challenge being a nonprofit in a market where you've got Disney and Universal and
Yes.
SeaWorld and all of those. We'll never have an advertising budget to be top of mind like they are.
Right.
So a lot of our efforts have to go through our social media. They have to go
Hmm.
through our earned media. And that again goes back to why storytelling is so important.
Yes.
If we tell a compelling story
Yes.
and media picks it up, then that increases our advertising budget in its
Yes.
way dramatically.
Yes. And even though Publix has a big ad budget, that the Publix commercials come to mind,
Mhm.
because you have those holiday Publix commercials that make you cry. It's sort of like telling those compelling stories about families connecting at the zoo.
Mhm.
I don't know. These are the things that come to mind, but but also the conservation aspect of it too. It seems like even though there's a lot of complexity to what you do and all the different audiences you serve, you are rich with stories to tell.
Mhm. That is one benefit we have that a lot of other organizations don't. We have great visuals, we have great stories,
Yep.
um, and people want to see them. I
Yes.
mean, on social media, what we see as our traffic and our following and our engagement on posts, a traditional business just is not going to get that.
Mm-hmm.
Animals just work for people. Video of
Yes.
animals, one of the most searched things on the web is video cat videos. So
Yes. Yes.
because of that, we have a hard time standing out in the market for what we're able to spend. But when
Right.
in terms of the assets we have to show, we
Yeah.
know that when we are in front of people, they're more likely to engage.
Gotcha. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the various ways that you bring in revenue. And I'm curious, as sort of a follow up to that, so what are your, I guess the first question is sort of what are your focuses on how you're, growing the organization financially, but then how do you stay innovative also? How do you stay kind of ahead so people are always wanting to come back?
Yeah, and the second part is a challenge.
That's challenging.
Um,
Yeah.
as far as our revenue stream, so obviously our gate and people coming in for a regular day at the zoo or an event at the
Mm-hmm.
zoo are one of the big ones. We added 4 years ago our Asian Lantern Festival that runs from
Mm-hmm.
mid-November to mid-January. That's been very successful for
Mm-hmm.
us. That's a big revenue driver for us, and that happens in the evening, so it's in addition to the daytime revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big plus. But then we book a lot of private events,
Okay.
a lot of corporate events. We have a zip line.
All
That's
right.
a separate ticket. We have a train, and that's a separate ticket.
Yep.
You can do interactions with our rhino if you book them ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we do giraffe feeding and feedings at our barnyard. So all of those drive some incremental revenue. We have a membership program. And then we do a lot of fundraising related things, everything from writing and trying to get grants from different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
organizations or governmental grants, um, you know, individuals, and then corporate sponsorships. So all of those are different types of things that we use for revenue. And then we have all our education programs and the
Mm-hmm.
revenue that comes from those. And those are for kids, they're for adults, all different ages. So all of those kind of combine at an organization like we are, the gate and tickets for a normal visit are always going to be the lion's share, and
Sure.
everything else is stuff. But where you can really move the needle is really the fundraising and the private events.
Yes. Yeah, and that's that's kind of what I expected to hear. And I love we haven't been down yet, because we're close, but I haven't been down to what is it called, the Asian night where you
Asian
do
Lantern Festival, yes.
lantern fish. Yeah, but we've had various friends that have gone and they have posted all over Facebook about it, and it looks amazing. Which I'm sure that's a great ad for you.
It's been huge. The first year we did it, we had about 40,000 people come. The second year, 89,000.
Mm-hmm.
We're sold out more nights than not. We were at a little over 95,000 this year, and that
That's
was with us capping capacity several nights because rain made parking difficult in certain areas. So,
right.
but think about it. In this area, there's really nothing else holiday-ish at that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the Asian Lantern Festival is really a cultural experience,
Mm-hmm.
because of the timing of it from mid-November to mid-January, you're walking around, you're with family, there's hot
Yeah.
chocolate, so everyone considers it to be also a holiday event. But it's been incredibly successful. And I will say, when I got here, we'd done it for a couple of years, and everyone was talking about it. Everyone was asking me, are we bringing it back? Are we bringing it back? And I was like, what is the big deal about this thing? I
Mm-hmm.
don't like what I was picturing in my mind was not at all what it actually is. And then when first time I saw it all lit up, I was like, oh, I get it now. I
Yeah,
understand. Like, this is an amazing date night. This is a great family night.
it's
I
an
had
attraction.
no idea. Yeah, it really, because of the way our property is, with all the trees, with all the boardwalks,
Mm-hmm.
and you add all that to it, and it goes throughout the property. It's just a really nice feeling that you couldn't get at a large city zoo with big concrete paths that are the
Yes.
size of a street. And for some reason, it just fits our property perfect.
And I like that kind of event because it's so unique and well done. But when I think about retention, that's the kind of thing that comes to mind for an organization like yours, because like our kids are now in the teenage years, and when they were younger, we would go to various zoos, and including Central Florida Zoo, And but now that they're getting older and they want to go off with their friends and do different things, the zoo is not as much on our radar, except for when you have an event like that. Now
Right.
it's like, oh, hey, well, we can bring your friends and we can all go do this thing. It's not going to the zoo like we normally go to the zoo. It just happens to be at the zoo. So I think that's a great path for retention of previous families and potentially even attracting new families that haven't been out.
And we've seen that. We have seen and heard a lot of people that have come to the zoo for that event that had not been to the zoo before, that have,
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear them walking by saying, "Oh, we really should come during the day sometime.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been here." You know, when we look at who comes based on zip codes, we have people coming from all over this area, some as far as 2 and 3 hours away,
Yeah.
to do this year after year. And then we've actually had some people, apparently with these Asian Lantern Festivals, there's a subgroup of people that go to them everywhere they can find them and travel
Oh,
the country. So
okay.
we had some of those too.
There you go. Yeah,
But
the super fans.
it is a great way to engage a different audience than we normally would that might
Yeah.
not be thinking about a zoo.
Yeah.
That's also why we do our Brews Around the Zoo event. We have some sunset events we do that,
Mm-hmm.
they're just a different take on what the zoo is, and maybe an event that won't have so many kids sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the time of night, so that those people that think of a kid or think of a zoo and go, "Oh no," but there'll be all those screaming school groups of kids. They don't have to worry about that then.
Right. And I would imagine that events like those help you, especially the Asian night, like it helps you to stand out
Mhm.
amongst your competitors like Disney and Universal, because I have to imagine that those parks at some point have a saturation point with their guests. I
Yes.
mean, there are your super fans that will go, religiously, and all the pass holders. But even so, I mean, you can only go so many times before you're ready for something new. And so if you're producing something new locally and the location is amazing, then they're probably going to swing by.
And that's, we've seen a lot of that. And honestly, you know, we've had a lot of word of mouth to help increase
Mm-hmm.
that attendance. People come back over and over. We got a lot of people that, as soon as the tickets go on sale, book the same date every year,
Yeah.
because some will come like the day or before, the day after Thanksgiving or something like. They
Yeah.
bring the whole family.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to see, but it's been incredibly successful for us. But the other thing that's kept it successful is every year, almost everything you're seeing is all new. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and that will have traditional Asian lanterns, and they'll be switched out so they're different from year to year. And then we also have a themed area that we choose. So last year our theme was prehistoric, so we had traditional Asian lanterns, and we had a bunch of dinosaurs all over the place,
Yeah.
and people love that. And so
That's
each
cool.
year we get to change it up a little bit. But like this past year, there were, I think, two things that had been there before, and they were there by popular demand.
Oh
Being there,
wow.
but otherwise, all the other installations, out of 30 something installations around the property, were all new.
I love it, and I think it's great that you're identifying these families that have found a day on their calendar that they're going to plug you in, and annually they show up. I think that's amazing. That's a great win.
Yeah, no, we feel very fortunate. We had no idea. I mean, we thought this would work well here. We had no idea it
Yeah.
would work this well.
So I want to get to maybe a story or two that no one's heard about, behind the scenes story that no average person knows. But before we get there, on our way there, I want to talk about some inherent risk that come with running a zoo, and maybe one or two things that we would my audience would want to know, and which of those have you actually had to endure so far?
Sure. So there's a lot of risks, obviously,
I'm
with live
sure.
animals, including, some of the live animals we have are animals that could be deadly,
Yes.
and some of them are venomous animals that one moment where you're not looking the right way and you're trying to handle them and something could go very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you obviously have that side of it. You also have over 400,000 guests a year,
Mm-hmm.
and people will do what people will do, and sometimes they think it's cute or funny to try to get into an enclosure or
Yes.
to try to throw things at animals, or I mean there's all kinds of things that can happen. But beyond that, you've got weather. I mean, we are in Florida and there are hurricanes all the time, and they're a real challenge for us. Obviously, going through them, making sure that all the people, all the animals stay safe, but also recovering from the damage that they bring.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways in which things can be stressful at a zoo. We do a lot of drills. We work with local authorities a lot to do drills about, if an animal escapes, what
Mhm.
happens. We work with the sheriff's department. We work with the county. We have days that everyone comes out. We surprise our staff. They have no idea it's coming, and they don't know whether it's real or it's not.
Yeah.
We go through and do those kind of drills.
Yeah.
Same thing for venomous animals. We have a protocol with the HCA hospital down the road,
Yeah.
and they have the anti-venom, they have everything that's needed. And we work with them every year to do surprise drills like that with the team that handles those snakes to
Sure.
make sure that we're ready. So there's a lot of those safety protocols that help prepare us for a lot of things, but also, any place that has a large number of people on a daily basis, you have to be worried about all the things that can happen because,
Hmm.
whether you're a mall or a school or you're a church or whatever else, any day anyone can walk in and do anything.
Hmm.
And so, we try to be as prepared and watchful as we can for any of those things, but it's always in the back of your head.
Now, I mean, now that you're talking about these things, it sounds like you are running the most complicated business that I've ever heard of. I can't think of off the top of my head. I cannot think of a more complicated business because I mean, everything that I thought is true, and then you added about six things, and you also serve food there, don't you?
Oh, yes.
So you're in the restaurant business, which is already a complicated business.
Yes.
Wow, I mean, that's a lot of moving parts.
This is the job for someone who doesn't want any day to be the same and likes a
Yes.
challenge. That's for me, I love this job. It
Yeah.
fits me to a T. I get to do something, that I feel like makes an impact and that I'm
Yeah.
passionate about, and I could never, ever imagine getting bored.
I mean, you will not be bored.
No.
There's no way. Stressed, maybe, not bored.
But, but the thing about it is, the moments where wonderful things happen, the moment that an endangered animal is born here, and we
Yes.
know we've helped that species survive, the moment you see the light go on in a kid's eye or an adult's eye, that they understand now why something's important, or that
Yeah.
they're just, connecting with an animal in a way that might change how they behave or decisions they make at other points of their life.
Yeah.
Those moments are so rewarding, and watching the team do amazing things when the odds are against them, that
Mhm.
all the other stuff is easily worth it.
Yes, I could see that. I mean, the endangered species being born is pretty amazing. I mean, the fact that you're furthering a species on the planet, and you're watching it happen with your eyes. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, you asked about, ones that I may have endured. I will tell you, 6 months into my tenure here, we had Hurricane Ian.
Okay.
And for us, Hurricane Ian was a little different than it was for everyone else. We got the property ready to reopen, and then water started coming up because all the water from City of Sanford starts going back towards Lake Monroe, and
Hmm.
all the water from like downtown Sanford starts coming back towards I-4. And we're at that little intersection where it all collects, and the
Hmm.
front part of our property is very low, and we're wetlands. We were built on wetlands. Our front road in and out of the zoo was underwater to the tune of about 2.5 to 3 feet of water for almost 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it's the only road in and out of the zoo.
Yes.
So we were closed for 28 days. The Naples Zoo got directly hit with the hurricane and had damage, and they were closed for 10 days. So we were
Wow.
closed longer than any other zoo or aquarium from that. Our team had to make an agreement with Sunrail where they would let us walk over their tracks supervised twice a day to get our bare minimum, like our keeper staff and a couple of the others of us in every
Hmm.
day. And we had to cross at the same time and get out at the same time every day,
Hmm.
or you were there here overnight. Like there was
Wow.
no choices. But it was so helpful they allowed us to do that.
Yeah.
Wharton Smith, it's right near us, allowed us to use their parking lot for our staff during that time. But otherwise, I don't know how we would have gotten in and out to care for the animals effectively, because we
Yeah.
were at a point it was taking us 2 hours to get in and 2 hours to get out, bringing people on basically on heavy equipment in a lull. So
Yeah.
but that was tough. I mean, 28 days of not
That's a
being
long
open
time.
and keeping everything going. It's to give you just a rough idea. It costs us about $775,000 a month in expenses to keep the zoo going.
Okay.
So 28 days of being closed was over $600,000 of expenses with no income, and we had over $400,000 of actual physical damage.
Yeah, in addition. And then, so you got the people in to take care of the animals, but what about supplies and food and all those kind of things?
So those were coming in a bucket, metal bucket on a lull, and they were
Okay.
able to drive those in that way. But it was incredibly slow, and there was only so much we could take at a time.
Yeah.
But we were able to get that stuff all in. But it was dicey for a while trying to figure out
I
how are we
bet.
going to get larger things that some of the bigger animals need in.
Wow.
Because it's not just like bags of food. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it. There's browse, pieces of trees and things like that that the animals need. There are lots of larger things they need for their daily life. So it was a challenge, but I will say, watching the team step up to that plate and take care of everything the way it needed to be during that time. I mean, the minute our keepers could be given clearance to come to the zoo to check on their animals, like they were all calling and saying, "When can we go?
Yeah.
When can we go? When can we go?" They've all got damage at their houses.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a dangerous drive to get in, but they still like the first thing they wanted to do. How are my babies?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I asked for some stories and I already got one, so thanks for that. That's amazing. I mean, and good on you guys for you have. I mean, it's obvious that you all have passion for what you're doing. I mean, that's coming through, and I only imagine the team's the same way.
Oh yeah, and that's a blessing in so many ways,
Hmm.
and also a little bit of a curse in that emotions are very close to the surface all the time.
Yes.
So you have that to contend with, but I mean, everyone's rowing in the same direction because the reason we're all here are these animals, and
Yeah.
to a person in almost every department we have, they could go somewhere else and make more money.
Hmm. That's
Nonprofits aren't the most
that's not. They're
lucrative
not there for
places to
that. Yeah.
work. They're here because they believe in the mission. They're here because they love the animals. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing with our volunteers, with our board. Like everyone involved in the zoo, and that's part of what's so rewarding is everyone's so passionate about it that whoever you're talking to, they actually care.
Hmm.
And there aren't a lot of places you can go and work that that.
That's right. That is for sure. So, what about a story that the average person wouldn't know that has happened behind the scenes at the zoo that I don't know you've thought maybe we shouldn't tell, but it'd be maybe a funny story.
Yeah, that's a harder one. I mean, there's literally things every
There's
day,
yeah,
but the
there's got to be
animal
so many things dealing with
Yeah,
animals.
the animal team. I will tell you one that I just think is really funny myself.
Okay,
So a few months ago, we got a new sloth in, and we got nutritionists that literally prepare individual diets for every animal every day.
okay,
And they had prepared diets, but they were excited about this new sloth. They wanted to bring her some treats and give her some treats. So they come over and they've got treats, and one of them gives her a piece of carrot. And this sloth has this look on her face like she's the most excited animal on the face of the earth to ever get a piece of carrot. And she's so excited. She grabs it and she starts pulling it towards her. And she does the slothest thing possible. She fell asleep before she got a plate. And I just thought that was amazing. I was like, there's nothing a sloth could do that sounds more like a sloth than that.
that is hilarious. I'm sure you have a million stories just like that with every different breed and animal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the thing is, I try to walk the zoo as many times as I can in the morning when I get here, just before I
yeah,
start into meetings and things like that. And there are certain animals that I definitely feel a bond with, and that I
hmm
go and say good morning to every morning I can.
hmm
And sometimes they're interactive, sometimes they're not. But
yeah,
there are personalities and there are tendencies, and even just the habits that they have, and seeing how individual they are, so that two animals of the same species may behave completely differently.
hmm
It's just so interesting because you see those similarities between us as humans, and the
hmm
fact that we can be from the same family and be completely different, and
yes,
so can they. And
yes,
it's really interesting to watch that and watch how they react to different stimuli,
yeah,
and how they react sometimes to the crowds.
hmm
We have some animals that just absolutely love interacting with the crowds. We
hmm
have some that are great during the day, but if we have night events, they're going to scurry away to their back area and be nowhere to be found because
hmm
we've screwed up their routine and they don't
yes,
really want to see people. And we try to give them that choice, but
yeah.
it's really fascinating to watch them as individuals.
So, last question for you before we go. What do you wish everyone knew about the zoo that most people don't know? And I know we've covered a lot of different topics, so feel free to
I
touch
think
on one or two.
honestly, there's probably two. One is understanding how we get our animals and why we have them.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of misperceptions of thinking we are just here to make money, and that's
Hmm.
not the case. We put the money back into this organization and mostly into the care of those animals.
Hmm.
But I think the big thing is that we are nonprofit, fully nonprofit, and so many people assume that we are getting large chunks of money from the government that are subsidizing everything we do, and we
Hmm.
don't really need money. And that's not the case. We have to earn the money to do everything we do. I had a boss at the Florida Aquarium, and he used to always say, no margin, no mission. And that is so true. For a nonprofit, if you aren't earning enough money to cover your expenses and have some more, you can't have more of an impact. You can't do more conservation because there's nothing to fund it. So
Right.
for us, we're always trying to find sources of funding, donors, different things, so we're able to increase that impact. So I think to me, people really understanding that we're truly a full nonprofit and not funded by the government is a really important one.
Yeah, that is important. Yeah, I mean, because I didn't know. I mean, I asked you right before we got on this that is it? Are you a nonprofit or a for profit? Because I'm not completely sure. I thought it was nonprofit, but you never know.
Yeah.
So that's a good one to clear up. So I assume you guys do tours. Do you ever do behind the scenes tours where people can go and see the inner workings of the zoo?
So we don't right now offer a behind the scenes tour people can purchase. We
Yeah,
do a lot of behind the scene tours with people. Usually it's potential donors,
sure.
officials, things like that, to really explain what we do. We do have some programs, like we do a night hike periodically where
Okay.
people can hike to the zoo at night. We do photography tours where you learn how to photograph
Yeah.
different animals and the plants, all those kind of things. So we do some things like that. But at the moment, we're not offering kind of a traditional behind the scenes tour, partially because we are a 50-year-old facility. And there are a lot of areas behind the scenes that aren't really ADA accessible.
Hmm.
So, as much as we'd like to offer something like that, we don't feel like it's right to offer it if we can't offer it to everybody.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, well, hey, this has been an amazing conversation, as I knew it would. You officially run the most complicated business I've ever heard of,
I don't know.
and good on you for doing it.
No, it sounds much more complicated than it really is.
No, it's complicated. It's very complicated.
Well, thank
The
you.
only thing that you don't offer is air travel. If you added travel in there, maybe it could be a little bit more
I mean, we
complicated.
do have a zip line, so we kind of
Okay, yeah, all right.
have.
So thanks, Richard, for being on. Once this goes out and people see it, how can they get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you directly, and if they wanted to explore all the things you have at the zoo, how would they do that?
Sure. So if they want to find me on Instagram, I've got an Instagram account as the zoo CEO specifically.
Nice.
So
Okay,
it's FLZoo _ CEO. But they can follow me there and they can contact me directly through that.
love it.
The zoo's website is centralfloridazoo.org, and they can find me that way. And there are many easy ways to find me on LinkedIn and other places. So
Okay.
I'm not going to necessarily give out my phone number,
No, of course, yeah,
but yeah, if someone wants to find me, it's not hard to find me.
that's great. Well, thanks again, and we'll have to have you back in time, just because this was such a great conversation. I know there's many more stories to be told.
Oh, for sure.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.